My name's Davina Kirkpatrick and I'm employed at Exeter Cathedral as a textile artist. I trained as a theatre designer, but then I went and did lots of other things, glass for architecture, architectural enamelling. I did a master's in printmaking and a PhD that was about grief and loss and how we live with the presence of absence in our lives. I'm making a triptych, which is going to be 2 metres by 1.5 metres. I'm using themes that I feel kind of pull on people in terms of why people still engage with churches which are around birth, marriage and death. So the broad themes, so the birth one can be birth, new beginnings, you know, can have different interpretations, and the marriage one could be more about union and love and friendship. And then the death one is about grief, loss, but also how we negotiate that, how we move between that and carrying on living. I'm working with a small group of mixed ages and abilities. I'm getting them to be, I like the term, seriously playful and expressive, with using the dyes, putting them on paper, building up layers of colour, and then firing them with the heat press onto fabric. I've chosen colours that for me represent that, which the birth one is greens and yellows, the marriage one is reds and golds, kind of umber colours, and the grief and loss panel is going to be kind of blues and purples, kind of Payne's grey, like the colour of the clouds today outside the window. Yeah, but I'm letting people who are doing the workshops decide what colours speak to them in that, because my idea was that I wanted each person to make a jewel that went on to the final piece. So it's like they are kind of involved in a conversation. So a bit like when you're on the bus and you get those like little snippets of conversation that happen that you just catch. So that's what I'm kind of thinking of them as, is like these little moments of conversation that kind of speak to those themes. Yeah. I did a lot of sessions with A-level textile students at Exeter College. And I've also worked with clients at St Petrock's. I'm doing some workshops for the general public here at the library, which is what's going on today. And I'm doing some with CoLab, which is women who've experienced domestic violence, and also Hikmat, which is refugee, addressing the refugee community. So nice broad range of kind of ages. And I've also worked with the tapesters at the cathedral, who are fantastic, and the staff. So I did a session for staff, because it felt like it was also about bringing together the community at the cathedral, not just the community outside of the cathedral.
I've enjoyed making my favourite art piece, and in a minute I'm going to just stitch around where the triangle bit is, where I've made. You might not be able to see it, but it's just faded a tiny bit. Pink's my favourite colour, and green represents my favourite, colour in my room.
I was interested in this workshop because I'd like to know more about making patterns on fabric. I do a bit of art on paper, and I've done a little bit on fabric silk painting, which is nerve-wracking. So I'm glad to try this.
So my friend actually kind of introduced me to the workshop, and I'm quite an artistic person myself, and I've just come down to Exeter for uni, and it gives me something kind of beyond the uni, something that allows me to engage with the community.
I worked with Davina. She came into a few of our classes, and she explained the project to our students, and I was there just to sort of help out, a bit of technical help and a little bit of design work sometimes, but really we were getting the students just to come up with their own ideas based on Davina's project. It was just really nice to see the students expressing themselves, having a brief to work from, but just having a bit more freedom that sometimes we've had in the first year of the course, because it's quite structured.
So Davina came into my class as well as the other textile classes in my year group, and for about 2 weeks we explored the project's brief of birth, death and marriage, and I chose to focus on death because although it's not something that's completely personal to me, I wanted to explore the idea of how as you lose a person, your memory of them changes over time. Normally we don't really do it in such a free, experimental way, and Davina really encouraged us to just be really open-minded and just have a play with everything, and it ended up in some really good results. I think I enjoyed the most just honestly hearing about Davina's process and the different stages of her life and what led to her kind of doing this project, and also just for me to be able to experiment with a theme that I've never really looked at before.
My name is Diana Symes. I am chairman of the Company of Tapesters at Exeter Cathedral, have been so for 15 years. The Company of Tapesters started 90 years ago, which is a long time for any organisation within a cathedral. 6 groups were initially made. There was the textile group, and they made vestments and banners. There was the canvas group, who made kneelers and cushions with canvas and tapestry. There was the white work, and they did embroidery for the altar linen. There was the rug making group, and they did mats for inside each of the chapels. There was a calligraphy group as well, and they did labels for all the chapels, and they did the service sheets for every day's services in the cathedral. And number 6 was the rope making. The ropes were made to cordon off where the public shouldn't go into the cathedral. So they were all done by hand. Everything was done by hand. And today we still follow that tradition of doing everything by hand. So we don't use machines, just our fingers. I enjoy being part of the cathedral community. I think in a small way I make a small contribution to the history and the continuation of services and worship in the cathedral. And I think that's important that those traditions are continued, and I feel privileged that I'm a part of that. Davina, who's been in charge of it, I've helped her with some workshops at Exeter College, went along and helped some of the students there, and she also gave a special workshop just for the tapesters. We went up to the sacristy and did some creative work and then put that through the heat press onto some satin work, which hopefully will be included in the final wall hanging that she's going to produce.
When I installed it, and even without the lighting on it, I really felt like it did this really amazing thing of lighting up that space and bringing kind of a real burst of colour and brightness into the space, which is really beautiful, but a lot of it's quite muted and kind of quiet and dark. So there's like this kind of explosion of joy. It feels very joyful. Even the death panel feels very joyful to me. The project as a whole has been really interesting for me. I applied for it because it was about ritual, and rituals really interest me, and that way that we need ritual in our life. But I think the working with all the different communities was so exciting, and getting involved with the tapesters, who I completely fell in love with, who are the most amazing women in the whole world. And they were so helpful and welcoming to me, and even helped stitch on some of the circles. And they came to the workshop that I ran for the staff and volunteers here. Yeah, I just like the fact that the wonderful Liz managed to get so many different groups of people together, and people that had not been to the cathedral ever, or had not been to the cathedral since they were children, and that we worked with such a wide variety of people, from young people at Exeter College who were all really diverse and came with a kind of textile background anyway, because they were doing A-level textiles, but also then, you know, I really liked working with Hikmat and the refugees because they just brought really different visual language with them. Really interesting ideas that come from other cultures and other religions, but there's that kind of crossover. That was what I got excited about, were those crossovers between where religions meet. And I think that's always around ritual, actually, and around those big celebrational moments of birth, marriage and death. So, yeah.